Well, sir, what's going on? What time is it there?
It's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. Yeah.
And
What?
you're not wearing your infamous Gorefest t-shirt.
No, I was going to just for you, but yeah, decided against it. So
Okay,
what's the riff that you like from them?
from the
How's
top
it
of the
go?
logo, from the top of the logo, that's an autopsy shirt, right?
Yep, you
Yeah.
got it.
Death metal
Yep.
point. The riff I
Seven
like,
Survivor.
is dun, 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 dun. And the main reason for that, I think, is because Gorefest were on like a dynamo, like some sort of dynamo fest special on MTV, that we all saw when we were kids. Kids, like
Yeah.
kids, maybe like 20, 21, 22. And it was just the song reality when you roar. But you know, there you go. That's about it. What was the demo called? Reflections of a Stained Mind, and then Mind Lost or
Yep.
something.
Mind loss, and then of course false.
Yeah, I sometimes think that if I had spent the time remembering all these death metal things, learning a language, I would have been better served.
Yeah, maybe you could speak English better.
This is it. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think I think back of all the things that went into your brain when you were a teenager, or when you were, um, like in the 1980s and things that I still remember now. Or
Yeah.
the hours you spent looking at the back of Ride the Lightning, staring at Kirk Hammett's dirty sock,
Right.
that you could have spent sort of paying more attention in French class or something like this.
Something. Yeah. I mean, I've got so much shit like that. I can't remember what it was, but I recently, God, I bought some record. I can't remember what it was, but a record I hadn't heard since high school. I remembered every single lyric. It's like it's been with me for 30 some years, just locked in there,
Yeah.
like it's been nothing.
Well, we were doing this the other day. We're on the bus going to somewhere with Primordial and Kieran. We were talking about this TV show. This has been nothing to you, so it's a kind of pointless story. But this show called Grain Chill,
Okay.
which was like this big TV show as kids in the 1980s. And Kieran started going down, 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 and we started to join in with the theme tune. And then you realize that like you could do that with 50 to 100 shows from when you were a kid. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
Oh yeah.
we spent all our time learning Irish when we were kids, which is fair enough. But maybe if I'd listened to German when I was 8 or 9 or 10, I might know more. I don't know.
Yeah. But then you wouldn't know the name of the first, the Gorefest demo, and then your life would be shit, right?
Yeah, I mean, probably over the years, I'd have to weigh up which has been more, which has been better off knowing. But anyway, so
Yeah.
Israel and Palestine. So
Yeah. Yeah. Go.
no, listen, we were discussing a few things about, and people do like the nonsense talk on all the kind of the preamble. But I've been talking about this with a lot of my friends now over the summer at festivals. Um,
Yeah.
is the sort of the figuration of your own mortality into your
Yep.
activity and how long we've been in bands, because it's approaching up to I'm 33 years in Primordial, and it's gone by in the blink of an eye. But yet at the same time you wonder how much is left. But also Agalloch is like 95, right?
Yeah. 95, 96, depending on where you mark it. But yeah.
And a couple of years off. But at the same time, what I was trying to get at when we were exchanging messages the other day was the. I mean, are you conscious of like how long the time period is that you've been doing this? And also, I've been thinking to myself, especially the reaction of the last album, which has been good. But I wondered to myself, I wonder, did we have a peak, and has it been already? It clearly probably has in popularity and maybe
Yeah.
creativity, and now you're kind of plateauing because and how you relate to or deal with that possibility. People are going to be sick of me talking, so off you go.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think this is an interesting thing, and I've been thinking about things like this for a while as well. I think Agalloch, in the context of Agalloch, might be a little bit different because we technically we broke up for 8 years.
Yeah,
We weren't even an entity for almost a decade,
yeah,
and we haven't written any new music or anything like that. But I'd say as a whole, and maybe not just Agalloch, but bands as an example, I think there's always going to be in your early career or maybe your midpoint like the record that everybody loves the most.
yeah,
For Agalloch, it's the Mantle.
Yeah.
I don't think we would ever write a record that is as well loved as that record. However, I don't think that necessarily has to do with the quality.
Mm.
I don't think it necessarily has to do with the music that we're making. It has everything to do with when people are accessing it,
Yeah.
what age they're at,
Definitely.
what they're influenced by,
Yeah.
time and place. The Mantle came out at the perfect time. It came from a place that wasn't producing a lot of music at the time, or a lot of metal anyway at the time, and uh, I just think it was just kind of like lightning in a bottle for that moment. Um, Nostalgia is just, it's impossible to compete with, you
Yeah.
know. I assume that the Primordial has like a record that is the record, right?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, like the first time to continue on the Agalloch, I mean, first time I heard Agalloch was the Mantle, and it was Darren from Morning Beloved, and
Okay.
Scopes from Sentinel, Sentinel Records. We were sitting in the kitchen in the house we shared together, fucking 20 odd years ago, and he just goes, "I got this promo CD. We're gonna fucking listen to it." Now, of course, if you're drinking and you're getting ready to fucking have your Friday night or Saturday night, I'm kind of twitchy. I'm kind of getting ready to play the hits, you know. And
Yeah.
I never forget more. He just looked at me. He goes, "Just fucking shut the fuck up and leave it alone while we fucking drink this bottle of whiskey or whatever we're doing, and just fucking take in this record." And fair play to him for making me shut up for about an hour to listen to it, but because it just totally went in, it totally went in for all of us, and it just was a kind of like, as you say, um, lightning in a bottle. It clearly was captured during that record. Now, some people would say Primordial, that was Journey's End. Some people would say To the Name is Dead, probably. But what I've been trying to sort of consider was like, I think what you've hit the nail on the head there about it's the age people grab hold of something you've made. You know, you
Yeah.
can't compete with that. You know.
No. No, I don't think you can. And again, I don't think that's any reflection on the art to the artist itself. It's a
Yeah.
reflection on the audience. And I found, you know, as far as Agalloch goes, I found that younger people, they are relating to albums that came after the Mantle more than the Mantle, and they're
Okay.
going back and discovering the Mantle.
Yeah.
But you know, now that we've been playing shows again, we're having people in the audience that, you know, they're like, oh shit, I was in elementary school when you broke up, you
Yeah.
know. So they're discovering records usually from like our last record, Serpent in the Sphere, and then going backwards. So I'm actually meeting people that like where Serpent is their favorite record,
Right.
which is new for us. And again, I just think it has everything to do with the audience and not the creator.
Yeah, because you can't really compete with either, you know, with either a listener's age or at least, like I said, when I heard The Mantle, that's 20 something odd years ago, it's almost impossible. Like I meet people very often with Promote and I go, "Ah, you never did anything better than Spirit the Earth the Flame." And I go, "Well, you know, that's 24 years ago." And then when you actually boil down to it with them, you go, "That was when they were 20 or
Yeah,
22." And it
yeah,
meant something to them. They went to a festival abroad and they went, "They're Irish," and we were the first band they saw on a stage in Grasspop or Vacuum or something.
yeah.
And a lot to them. And now, as a 45-year-old or 48-year-old suburbanite, maybe, you have less time to absorb records and absorb those things. And they just don't have that sort of seminal quality that punctuates your upbringing or something, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't have the impact. And you're at such an impressionable age, and like at least for me, you know, I grew up in rural Montana,
Okay.
and there was, you know, and so I mean, I started playing death metal at like 88, 89.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Um, and that point in time in Montana, nobody even knew the term death metal. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't a thing that people were really aware of. So when I got out of Montana and started like moving into the cities and actually seeing like death metal shows, every single performance I saw was mind blowing because it was such an unusual thing for me. And like even the most mediocre death metal bands were super impactful because it was such a fresh and new idea, you know.
Yeah, I was discussing this oddly today with a friend of mine about the band Virgin Steel, who I used to love in the 90s because I had a big sort of Manowar fixation. I love Virgin Steel, but I remember like sitting in 98 and taking in, and many records in 90, you know, the 90s and up to the end of the 90s, you would sit and you would listen and you would follow the bloody lyrics. And
Yeah,
When's the last fucking time like, dickhead, when did you last sit down and follow the lyrics? Maybe that's for Omega, possibly, because
Yeah.
it seems like the apex of where of that kind of thing. But you're just trying to find the time to penetrate a record the same way you used to is almost impossible. I find my brain
Yeah.
is shredded or something.
I think, I try to, as much as I can, keep up with what's going on and new bands. I try not to get too cynical about things. Um,
Yeah,
because I want to be open. I want to be open to new influences, and I want to be open to what people are doing. And I think there is some really quality stuff out there.
no
But
doubt about
because of because of how accessible everything is, it is really hard to find the time to just sit down. I mean, we used to do that all the time as kids, right? I remember like "Blessed Are the Sick" was like one of those moments. Like reading those lyrics with that inlay and that music, like that
that.
was incredible. And I haven't done that in a very long time.
But tell me this though: if you take something like the mantle, I mean, you sound like you're kind of at, I won't say at peace, but you've sort of recognized that maybe that's the sort of I'm not going to say the high watermark in creativity because I don't believe that that's true. And if you believe that, you're headed somewhere negative. But that's
Exactly.
the sort of I don't know how can I describe that. I got some sort of high point, at least in how people were receiving what you've made. That maybe you have to make peace with the fact that you aren't going to um, I I bad at explaining this. Sometimes I watch older bands than us, and they're playing an album, and they go back and they play a song, and so I go, fucking hell, 92, 86, 85, and I
Yeah.
wonder for a moment for them where they went, we're never going to have that lightning in a bottle moment again. It's retreating in the rearview mirror. And do you first worry as you're passing into middle age and beyond, or do you just sort of make peace with it?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question. It's, I mean, I think as far as Agalloch goes, I can't imagine that there will be a time that any other Agalloch record aside from the Mantle will be the one that people like laud as our like Rain and Blood. You know, that's going to be forever like the Agalloch record, um, even if we make a new one or whatever. But it doesn't mean that creatively uh, we don't have it in us.
Yeah,
I feel like, you know, we're still very creative people. I mean, we're not actively writing music right now, so it's kind of a hard question for me to answer. But I will say, with like other music that I make, it really depends on what we're talking about too. I mean, Agalloch, we've been around for 26 years or whatever. But like, I'm also in other bands and other projects that are experimenting with electronic music and ambient, and I feel like those type of things help inform all of my work and be like a more well-rounded creative person. Um, so like as far as like my creativity, I feel like I'm more creative and inspired than ever.
right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that that the audience is going to agree with that or care necessarily.
Hmm. I mean, it's interesting because Primordial didn't stop. We just kept on plowing ahead. And like I felt maybe people didn't really understand the album before. This one, Exile Amongst the Ruins, was quite introspective. The new one is quite aggressive, much more open, heavy metal, and I think it's a really good record. But I guess maybe after lockdown and stuff, I expected the reaction to be maybe a bit more intense. But now there's so much music out there. You're in and out of the digital album cycle very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And it already feels like the album is sort of a bit forgotten. But what I had to make peace with since it came out and now I'm playing festivals and gigs is like you kind of are where you are. It's sort of
Yeah.
plateaued. You're not, it's the first album where I thought to myself, I don't notice any chartable growth. It didn't get smaller, and we're still like, we just played a brutal assault, just third from the end,
Oh,
and that's,
nice. Yeah.
but you're not stepping on to being second from the end, or you're kind of moving into kind of legacy territory. And it sort of took me a while to kind of make peace with maybe that, like, okay, this is just where Primordial is now. It's at this place, and maybe a part, that's maybe that was a kind of an interesting little bitch slap to the ego, but it's probably natural, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, um, Carcass is a huge band for me, and so I use them as an example for a lot of things.
Sure.
Reek and Symphonies were life-changing statements for me,
Yeah.
and basically got me on so many paths that I'm still on today. And so, but like when I saw Carcass this year at MDF, no, last year, 2 years ago at MDF,
Yeah.
and they're still a fantastic live band. They're still great.
Yeah.
But I think about that, and I can't imagine them being any more popular or less popular than they are like right now.
Yeah.
So is that what you're talking about with Primordial? Like,
Well, no, it's not just really about promoting. It's more of my um, an observation, not necessarily about promoting, but about maybe like all bands reach a point, and all the bands that we loved growing up reached a point where you pushed as far as you kind of can. There's a ceiling to what you're
yeah,
doing, whether it's even like a Monomarth or Behemoth or whatever. These bands are now 30 years old.
yeah,
And I remember sitting in meetings 10, 12, 14 years ago with Metal Blade and people talking about what's the ceiling for a Monomarth? Could they be as big as Slayer or something like this,
right,
Which is a good conversation at the time. But I think even sitting down with Johan or else when out, they would say that, yeah, I suppose fundamentally you sort of plateau out a bit at some stage. And does that come with just being existing for a certain X amount of time? And once you hit about 20, 25 years, because you're not really are you really grabbing that many new younger fans who are using to recycle the thread or
right.
whatever? That's kind of what
Yeah,
I'm thinking about. It's not really about Primordial, but just kind of
yeah. I think you're 100% correct. But I still really think that it has very little to do with the music being created.
mm,
It has all like everything to do with the audience and when people are grabbing onto it. Um, but yeah, but I think there's a beauty to coming to terms with that as well. Like I don't, just like what I said about Carcass, like I don't see Agalloch getting bigger than we are.
yeah,
I think we're at this nice plateau that I'm really happy with. Like, I mean, we've done really well for ourselves. We pull in good audiences. We
yeah,
play well. I honestly think that we're a better band than we've ever been
yeah.
live.
That's true.
So I'm happy with that. I mean, sure, like I would like to play bigger shows, but still, I mean, I can't complain. I never anticipated Agalloch to get as big as it is. So I'm doing, just getting to see you again at MDF and hanging out with the Arcturus and the Mayhem guys. And I mean, that's amazing shit for me. So, I'm stoked, but I do agree that, there's this plateau that bands get to.
But tell me this though, because maybe we were never like career musicians in terms of making a living from it. Do you think that the
Right.
bands that we grew up with, let's say the Megadeths or the Judas Priests or whatever, when they were, let's say, the downsizing of their ambitions was drastic once it hit a certain year,
Oh
like
yeah.
went boom.
Oh
How
yeah.
how worried must you be when that's happening? Because it's your fucking, you've got other people relying on you for their livelihood. Imagine that. I was thinking about that.
Yeah. And then you have to come to terms with that, the declining ticket sales, the declining record sales. And then it's all that pressure on you and your band to do something that's going to bring the people back in. And that it's not, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I mean, I think Megadeth is a great example. I mean, I think they still play some, pretty large shows,
But
but
they came back up in the last couple of years because of basically being a classic rock band, a legacy
yeah,
band. But
yeah,
I mean, I think I saw them in the mid '90s to about 500-600 people. Maybe I saw Iron Maiden to 600 people. They couldn't even
yeah,
fill a 1,200 venue with Blaze Bailey. Um,
yeah,
and we were just talking about that last weekend. What the fuck must that do to your psyche? Because we
yeah,
we come from the underground, so we had a
right.
perception of how big we could be, and the fact that we just made records and went, oh, we can go to another continent and play was kind of, we were chuffed with that. And you've then
Yeah, for sure.
and you have a few more ambitions, and you go, all right, okay. But for bands like that who are told in the '80s you can make a fucking living now, I think about what must that be like to go from like Dio, 20,000, 15, 20,000
Yeah,
people, fucking 250.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing, and I think especially for those bands, um, like Megadeth, or like they have these examples of like Metallica, or like Black Album era Metallica, of just being like the biggest band in the fucking world, and then everybody's just like dropping, and
Yeah,
then like the floor is dropping out from them. Yeah, and then you're playing like pubs instead of arenas. You
Yeah,
know.
I mean, look at Dio. I mean, even but
Yeah.
I was looking at this. I'm super nerdy about figures, and like Holy Diver, like sold something like 4.5 million copies or something.
Oh
You know,
damn. Yeah.
it's huge. And then you go by Strange Machines, they're playing to a few hundred people. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually I saw Dio in a bowling alley in Minnesota. Like
Really?
that's how dire that got. You know.
Wow.
I
What year
mean,
was that?
it was a tour with My Dying Bride. So that
Yeah, yeah.
was,
That's 96, I think, right?
yeah, I think it was like Gods of the Sun tour. So yeah, that sounds about right. 96.
Could be the
Yeah.
album could be the album Magica, maybe, or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, a much different situation.
That was very strange. I asked the My Dying Bride guys about that, and they got asked to go on tour with My Dying Bride or Iron Maiden. And back when, it was the beginning of the Blaze era, and they could still, they were still playing big places in Europe and stuff. And Steve
Yeah.
Harris called up Aid and went like, "Hey, sorry, Aid, if I'm retelling your story wrong." Called up. I went, "Yeah, yeah, Steve Harris, you want to support Iron Maiden?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah, fuck off," and put down the phone. Then he rang back and he went, "No, really, like, come on, you want to do it?" But they had to sneak in for catering and all that kind of stuff. But they were still pulling tons of people. But what was odd was that later on that year, Dio wanted My Dying Bride as well. Like, how bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, Dio and
That
Iron
is bizarre.
Maiden want My Dying Bride as their main support.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems odd. I love My Dying Bride, but it just
Or,
seems like an odd mix.
but you would pair them, you would put them in front of the 400 or 500 Dio fans left from the 1980s. What are they going to
Yeah.
think of that kind of stuff,
I know. Yeah. Yeah. That was an odd show. Literally in a bowling alley.
But it's just something that I think what I've noticed is that you had the lockdown moment, which took 2.5, 3 years really to resolve for the music industry, and in that time, like I went from being nearer to 40 to nearer to 50. So it took the middle bit of my 40s, and for an awful
Yeah.
lot of musicians who are the same age, it kind of took the same, like this sort of sliver out of that, and all of a sudden you kind of went, oh fuck, but the band is going now 30, 32, 34 years, and you begin to think about not just your own musical mortality, but a bit more about your own mortality. And like I said,
Right.
weave that into this kind of concept that I was trying to, we're exchanging messages about, that the sort of um, idea that, like I said, I think you've rightly pointed out, it's not that you've made your best work, but that somehow you're looking at the rearview mirror at the main body of your career in music behind you, or even your musical life and career behind you.
Yeah.
Is a kind of a bit of a head fuck to get. Well,
Yeah.
I find it hard to get my head around it.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a favorite Primordial record?
Um, I have favorite songs. I like Redemption of the Puritans Hand a lot. To the Name is Dead, and I have other connections to the ones from the '90s and stuff. Not really. I think we've been pretty consistent, and the fact that a lot of people have different favorites, I think maybe means that we did, sort of kept the rudder reasonably steady, but like
Right.
just kept on going. And even I was talking, with say Sakis and Rotting Christ or Adam from Behemoth recently, and everybody's kind of like going, all of a sudden is now celebrating 35 or 30, 25-year anniversaries. Running Christ 35 years, and then you realize like you're not like young exciting new bands anymore. You've moved off that radar.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
somebody has gone, hey, get off the fucking the hill there, you're going down the other side of the,
Yeah.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Somebody's pushed you down the gentle incline, or sometimes it's a bit more, but
Steep
and
incline.
yeah, and that's what I've been trying to sort of talk to lots of people who are the same age and sort of try and get them into opinion about how best to navigate it or to understand it. And because Agalloch took that break, like when you came back, did you then feel you had like to make up for lost time, or that you were just like chuffed to be back again, or did you feel like you were kind of cheated out of a decade, or what?
For me, it felt more like a second chance.
Mm,
The breakup was not a pleasant one for
yeah,
anybody.
Mm.
But we're able to repair friendships, then repair the band, and then it just became like this second chance to do what we wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah.
And it felt like lost time for sure, but that wasn't the focus. Really, the focus was more like, so let's do things we've never done before. Let's play in places we've never done before,
Yeah.
never been before. Things like that. We're headed to Australia in 3 weeks. We've never played there.
Yeah. It's great.
Do stuff like that. Obviously there was time lost, but it almost felt necessary. It was like we needed to sleep for a while
Really?
to like, yeah, it felt like we hit this point where it was like almost not fun anymore. It was,
Okay.
we were touring a lot.
Yeah.
We had a lot of external pressures, a lot of internal pressures.
Yeah.
I had little kids at the time.
Yeah.
Like all of these factors, most of us had full-time jobs,
Yeah. Of course.
and we were still touring, 2 months, sometimes 3 months of the year. And it became unsustainable for us. And we all had different priorities and goals at that point in time. So it was almost like the breakup was just like us taking a nap for a while. And now we feel we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
We all have the same goals for the most part. So we're re-energized now, and it's a great place to be. I do wish that we didn't have to break up to do that, but I also, like, completely 100% honestly, I never imagined that we would ever reform. There was no doubt in my mind. So the fact that we did and we get to do this again,
Yeah.
I couldn't be more grateful.
And you get to do it and pick and choose the festivals, and there's demand, and people
Yep.
are happy to see you again and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not having to play bowling alleys or in front of 200 people.
Yeah.
We're getting to pick and choose. We're in a pretty amazing position right now, but it's also completely changed our direction and our goals. Like I said, we're not writing music. We're like, I mean, at worst, we're like a legacy band or like a tribute to the old days. But at best, we're just celebrating our body of work.
I think that I like, if you take Kieran from Primordial and me, we're about as two different people as you could possibly imagine. And if I'd talk to him about the mortality of the band and this and the other, he'd just be like, "What are you worried about?" But I'm quite a sort of hectic, sort of a bit chaotic and a bit all over the place. And I'm like, hey, TikTok, we have to play in Buenos Aires before I'm dead, which could be tomorrow. Let's fucking book it now, get the flights. And he's just, will you fucking relax? And I have another friend of mine who I'm going to meet tomorrow. He used to be in the band Arcane Sun, 50 million. And it's like as if he just be like, if I said to him about age and this, that, the other, and aging, he'd be like, what do you mean? Are we nearly 50? Of course, he's being, facetious, but mocking me. But just no consciousness, really, of, I think, the aging process. And the thing with Kieran is good, because if there were two of me in the band, it would be a fucking nightmare. But you think, I have to know when to pull, and he has to know when to push, or whatever. Two different things.
Yes, yin and yang. Yeah.
Kind of. But like, I always feel a bit like, hey, TikTok. You need to get to these places before you die, and you could be struck by lightning now tomorrow. So I'm always I feel like I'm in a rush. But this year has kind of maybe tried to tell me to chill out. And I never took for granted being, traveling and playing and doing festivals. I always loved it. And I'd be walking stage, you go, fuck, man, you're walking on stage in Moscow or Mexico or, Santiago. Yeah. I was like, this is brilliant. I never took that for granted at all. But this year, I've kind of gone, try to be a bit more calm and just enjoy things a little bit more. Because otherwise it seems to go by even quicker when you're more hectically minded,
Exactly. Yeah, I can feel that for sure. And I'm feeling that clock as well, because it was taken away from me, because we were broken up for that period of time.
Yeah.
The moments are more poignant, every show, every moment of playing this music with my best friends is such a powerful emotion for me. But it does make me hungry for more, but I am enjoying it more as well.
But it's also, it's got a kind of a really sweet pathos to it, or something, like a real sort of the sort of beauty of aging together into this thing. When I calm moments, I look on the stage and look at everything and go, look at the house we built, and there's people in front of the band enjoying it. you know, and also taking a lot of other extra things from it, and you go, it's all been worth. It does feel completely worthwhile. But of
Oh
course,
yeah.
that moment where you look in the rearview mirror and go, "Fuck it!" Like say, I'm negotiating at the moment to release some old Primordial stuff from 1991 to 94, like on some 12 inches and stuff. And then Kieran and Paul were like, "Yeah, we have a demo from '88. You can put that on if you want." Nobody's ever heard it. That's when they were a death metal band, you know. And
Okay. Yeah.
we were just sitting there talking about, going, and as you said, playing in the late '80s and stuff. We're like, "Fucking hell, 1988! What the
Yeah.
fuck?" You know?
Yeah. 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 It's crazy, but it is beautiful. I mean, you're right. Like I've known John since we were like 13,
Yeah,
and like looking downstage and being like, here we are.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
we were just writing crappy death metal songs in our bedroom in high school, and now look at what we're doing. I mean, it makes you feel like anything's possible.
And think about this. We were discussing sometimes, you know, sometimes we were, me and Dara from Invictus and a few other people were discussing glam rock, you know, like, you know, bands like Firehouse and Bang Tango and fucking whatever,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. And you realize for some of those bands, their career started in 86, 87 or 85. And by 91, it was just over. They
Right.
had, they had
It's
like a
done.
5 year career and they were out.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
maybe
it.
they're still going playing in bowling alleys right now somewhere, but a lot of them, they had like 5 year careers, and then you look back and you go, "Fucking hell, we managed to do this for 30 odd years." It's fucking, it's weird, and I think it's testament to the nature of the underground. I think
Yeah, I agree.
that and it has, even when we were teenagers, it had a realistic ceiling on your aspirations, which
Right.
were, hey, maybe we're going to get signed to Osmos and release a record, and who
Right.
knows, maybe we could play in the Baroog in Rotterdam with Rotting Christ or something.
Yeah.
You weren't thinking like we're going to be on RCA and sell like, you know, 250,000 records or something. You know, maybe that's what
Right.
we all survived. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think, like I said before, like my aspiration was to make one record. I wanted to make one good
Yeah,
record,
yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and maybe play a couple shows, but even that seemed just too intimidating for us because we're only three people. We didn't have the
yeah.
members to play shows.
But when you saw your first death metal bands and your first bands and you thought, oh, that's what I want to do. I think, yeah, that I want to be on
Yeah.
that stage and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Like I remember all three of Promoted were at Sabbat in '89, English Sabbat. It was the
Yeah.
first time I ever saw a band with like the black and the like leather and
Okay.
like Kerry King studs, and they looked like a
Right.
pagan band. And I remember thinking, going, fucking hell, that really had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
And we were all there in the kind of, well, Kieran and Paul were there that knew each other, but sort of not really hanging out, you know, because
Yeah.
they were little kids playing together. I remember those the kind of moments where you went, fuck, I think we could, that's what I would like to be in a band or something like this, you know?
Yeah. I had a lot of moments like that, but growing up where I did, I couldn't see it live. I saw it on like the Hard and Heavy
Oh, yeah.
videos. Do you remember those?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like there's a thrash metal special one. I saw like Violence, Forbidden, Voivod, things
Yeah, yeah,
like that that greatly influenced me. And then just the underground, like tape trading and zines and all that.
yeah, yeah. Did you do a
Just
fanzine or something like that?
I did one issue, early '90s,
Right.
uh, but then I ended up writing for a bunch of other fanzines, and I wrote for Metal Maniacs and
Yeah, yeah.
Terrorizer, all that. But yeah, but
Yeah,
back in the day, I like helped other people out with zines.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I did. I started to do one in the end of '89 or '90 called Sold. And I remember the first band that replied to me writing was Pestilence.
Oh
I
yeah,
I sent an IRC to, not knowing, oh, maybe they won't ever write back. And somewhere in '89 they wrote back with a bunch of flyers. And I was like, oh, so this actually works if you write to a band, they write back.
yeah,
Then I wrote to like, Malevolent Creation, Dorsal Atlantica. I think the first fanzine had like Thanatos, Decomposed, Mythic, all these kind of bands. And then you realize like, oh, yeah, they do write back. And then when we made our first rehearsal in like '91, just, recording it on tapes for everybody and that kind of
yep,
thing. Maybe that's the nature of all that kind of stuff was what engendered the sort of the aspirational longevity of, you know, where we were, because no one was thinking, oh, we're going to be like the next big band or something. I don't know.
right. Because at our core, we're still thinking about those like hand dubbed cassettes,
Yeah,
and going to a photocopy machine, and you copy your J card and you send it out to Robert Deathrage from the Meat Shits.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, Meat Shit. There's a name I haven't heard in quite a while. Yeah.
yeah. He unfortunately we were pen pals for a while back in
Okay.
the day. Tape traded, and I just got a bunch of bullshit from him,
Yeah,
basically.
I was just thinking about my favorite song title they have, but I'm not sure that I can say it on the podcast, or I'll get.
I have an idea which one you're talking about. Yeah.
I'm going to get into trouble. But that was part of the whole wild rags thing. You just got like a pile of wild rags just in the post in your like. What the fuck? I never asked for these. And then a
Yeah.
bill. They
Yeah.
would charge you for like 20
Yeah.
copies of the wild rag, which
Yeah.
I wish I had now, but no, I don't have any of the wild rag anymore. But the wild rag is fucking that's Fallen Angel of Doom territory we're in now.
Oh yeah, blasphemy. Yep. Yeah. I mean, yeah. The wild rag stuff and like JL America, that was like a whole nother
Yeah.
like weird period of time too. Seraphic Decay.
Seraphic Decay. Okay, yeah. Hang on, let me just press this fucking thing.
What that is?
It's a Spanish beer, a Modri, but Modra means dog in Irish, which I find a bit
Oh,
curious. So I'm sure that's not what it's supposed to mean, but there you go. Anyway,
probably not, but whatever.
we left off with the wild rag.
The wild rag, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of experience with wild rags, but I definitely got a few of the wild rag laying around
I
back
mean,
in the day.
they were doing Hell Witch. They were doing, of course, Blasphemy. I think Order from
Yeah,
Chaos. A band called
yeah,
Mutilator, not Mutilated, and a
yeah.
whole Meat Shits and a whole bunch of other things. I think in Patago, also Mondo
Impetigo,
Cannibal,
yeah,
which I
yep.
liked quite a lot back in the day. They're still going, I think, in Patago, right?
Uh, well, I don't.
What was his fucking name? I'm sure I wrote to him. Richard something. No, that's not Richard from Wild Rag.
Yeah, I think of Richard C. Man, it's on the tip of my brain.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is good
I saw
podcast.
them at yeah, I saw them at a Milwaukee Metal Fest
All
in the
right. Okay.
'90s.
Tell me about that. What you went to the old Milwaukee Metal Fest back in the day, or what?
Yeah, I went to 2 or 3 of them. First year I went, got to see Disincarnate. That was awesome.
Okay.
Absu, Enslaved, Thought Industry. I think Cannibal played. Impelled Nazarene played one of the years I went.
We just played with them last weekend. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Was that when they were just dividing the stages by like a curtain or something like this?
No, this was at the Eagles Ballroom, and so it had like the downstairs venue and the upstairs venue. I think the one you're talking about is they had it for a couple of years in this like bigger like arena area, and it was like these like little tiny rooms that are kind of like segregated, but the bleed was just insane from stage to stage.
That's what I heard. All right. Why do you think then it is that, like, say, in Europe we have this strong festival culture in Europe, but and it's sort of now you've got a couple of cool ones popping up in America, but it took quite a few years. Like in the 2000s,
Yeah,
there didn't really seem to be a strong festival culture in the States. Is that just geographical or what?
it's it's interesting. I was just talking about this on my podcast a couple episodes ago about festivals,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Europe's had it dialed in for so long with festivals and festival culture, and America's getting a lot better. I mean, MDF is a fantastic festival.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, Hell's Heroes I went to for the first time this year. Got to see Solitude Eternus, your favorite.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was waiting for the link to come up on YouTube, and I was like, "Fucking hell, this sounds amazing." When am I? Just instantly questioning when is this coming to Europe or something?
Yeah. Oh, it was great, man. It was a great performance. But that festival is really great. I feel like there's more and more American ones, but still, like, I don't know what it is. I really have no idea, like why we've been so behind.
Is it just? I mean, is it just a geographical thing? I don't know. I mean, like we did 4 or 5 gigs then after MDF this year with Archgoat and Bloodbath, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be difficult with all the death metal bands, and Archgoat as well, and it was just amazing. It was like 400 to up to 1,100 people in LA. Like every time, it just was. It felt like a really big, as if in the last 10 years there's been a really big swing back of sort of positivity and people going to gigs again. Because I remember talking to like Samael and Enslaved and then bands who were touring America in the early to mid 2000s. They were like,
Yeah.
it's 25, 30, 40 people.
Yeah.
Like they were telling me disaster stories. And then Rotting Christ guys are like, man, touring America now compared to 20 years ago is night and day.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
why,
really cool to hear.
why is that, do you think?
That's really hard to say, but I think that metal is much more popular in the States than it used to be, especially extreme metal.
Right.
Um, I think it's more widespread. I think a lot of the venues are better than they used to be. I think they've learned from touring bands.
Okay.
I know, like when we were first touring around the States, you were lucky to get food, you know,
Yeah.
period. But now it's not unusual to start finding like a shower in a venue,
Yeah.
like European staples. But like here, we're catching up.
Sometimes you even get fruit. I mean,
Sometimes you even get food. Yeah,
you can stave off the scurvy. But
yeah. Have an orange,
yeah.
once a tour. Yeah,
What's funny is that I did an interview with some people on the street in LA, and I said that the because we're all living in this very atomized world, right? I think where people are taking far too much information from reels and from small social media clips. The prediction of America's sort of I'm not going to want to talk. I don't necessarily want to talk about politics here, but the prediction of American demise, which some Europeans seem to take great a sort of sneaky pleasure in when they've
yeah,
never fucking been there. Like I have
right.
to argue, like, hey, I love America. No, but I like going to America. I really enjoy it. And the predict that people were in LA, people were like, oh, what was it like? Was it like this? I went, that was there, but it also wasn't like that. Neither
Yeah,
was Baltimore as bad as everyone thinks it's. Seattle was fine. And the predicted demise. And I said to them, well, don't forget, you're from fucking Dublin. People are also watching people on the streets of Dublin riot or Irish history or whatever.
yeah,
And I feel like we've all just got this um, sort of outrageous, atomized view of how things are. And then I was really happy to come back from America. All of us were and go, you know what? The prediction of let's keep it musical demise, whatever you want to say.
yeah, yeah,
So it's just over the top because everything is over the top all the time. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, America obviously has a lot of issues, but we're not alone in having
No,
issues.
certainly not. No.
And I think that some of our issues may be uniquely American, but I also think that uh, I think we're growing so rapidly and changing so rapidly that we're just constantly having growing pains. And I think that as far as like musically, and especially with extreme metal, like we've always looked to Europe,
Right.
always. However, I think that in the last 20 some years, we've definitely forged our own identity. Um, I'm not going to say anything about Agalloch, but like there's only one Absu, you know.
Sure.
Um,
Well,
maybe
well,
thankfully, I don't know.
no, I love Absu, but let's talk
Me
about
too.
Agalloch for a moment because I think that maybe you're doing yourselves a disservice in a sense because Agalloch was one of the bands that I remember when we heard the Mantle first. I remember Moore saying to me, this somehow sounds European," and he didn't mean that in a sort of past remarkable way. He just meant um, because that sort of post black metal pagan whatever it was that you couldn't quite identify that a lot of
Yeah,
bands, including maybe Primordial, were kind of playing in Europe, and we didn't feel there were many contemporaries in
right.
America doing maybe this sort of more sadder, more epic sort of melancholy interweaved with this sort of kind of naturism or this sort of kind of aesthetic didn't seem to be reflected where some European bands were going in America. And then, like I said, when I first heard the Mantle, I was like, oh, okay, so it is happening in America.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and it sort of seemed like there was a sort of contemporary kind of thing going on, which, um, obviously made us all very fucking happy to hear because we really loved the album. But it was sort of like, oh, it there was something else brewing that wasn't just brutal death metal or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, I mean, well, we were, at the time, we're almost exclusively listening to European bands,
Yeah,
almost exclusively. Like at that point in time, the whole like, Tampa death metal thing was dead.
Yeah, yeah.
pretty much. And so, I mean, we're always looking to Europe for our metal. And so, you know, yeah, the fact that our record sounded European is no surprise to us.
But it did, but it kind of didn't in a way because most of us hadn't really, say, been open to now having been in the Pacific Northwest a whole bunch of times now. I can see easily how
Yeah,
the nature of the area totally fits the sound of the mantle, you know.
yeah,
But I guess now, you know, in your in as young Europeans, that's maybe not the first thing you thought of when you thought of about America. These, you know, these vast forests and this sort of
no, no, no.
the nature kind of influence, you know, which seems
Yeah,
dumb when I think about it now, but you know,
yeah, but you know, I mean, I think you know, most people that are not Americans, when they think of America, they think of like New York City, Chicago,
yeah,
Texas, maybe.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, they're not familiar with the Pacific Northwest or even like
yeah,
Appalachia or like northern, you know, New York or upstate New York or
yeah, yeah.
Maine, places like that. It's not represented quite as much, especially back then. It's just harder to know about those places.
And so, what other sort of American bands do you think were sort of tapping into that sort of thing back in the day? Because sort of Agalloch seems to kind of stand out um, very specifically in my mind when I think back now. Because most of my bands that I loved in America were either you had true doom bands, as I said, like Solitude Eternus and Penance and stuff, or they were brutal bands. Or in the mid '90s, I'm not quite sure what bands I was liking coming out of America. Probably like Winds of the Black Mountains or something. Oh, that must be before that. Absu, of course.
Yeah,
But it was all kind of aggressive or brutal stuff or doomy stuff. I'm not sure it was. You
there
guys
there
were a
was
bit indescribable, you know.
yeah, I think you know, and that's why I mentioned lightning in the in a bottle before. I feel like you know we were like a confluence of different inspirations, put our own twist on it, come from a place that didn't really have a lot of that music going on at the time. Um, but I think there were you know a few bands. There was the first December Wolves record
Oh, okay, yeah.
was yeah till 10 years. That was very much
Okay, I
in that
remember that.
vein.
I haven't listened to that in a long time.
Yeah,
I remember liking that at the time. Yeah,
yeah, that's a great record. There was Wyndham Hell.
Wyndham,
They're
fucking hell. All right, yeah.
Yeah, they're on Moribund back in the day, you know.
Okay.
Um, there was Corvus Corax, and I think they were
Oh,
on. They're a Seattle band. They were on. They might have been on Ajna. I don't remember.
yeah, yeah. Possibly. But there's a Corvus Corax who are a German band.
Yeah,
You might be thinking of. It almost sounds the same. They were they were on Misanthropy or Ajna or something like this, maybe.
yeah. I think I'm aware of that one too. But this was a Seattle band. They had one record only. But so there were like a few bands that were kind of you know like that when we were starting out. But we were very much looking to bands like In the Woods, Over,
Ah, in the woods.
um, you know,
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I saw In the Woods in '96 here with Catatonia,
Oh wow, yeah,
and it was you know because I knew Bithyard Overlord. What was his name? Jan Kennett, I guess.
yeah,
Um, and they were the oddest looking band you've ever seen in the woods, you know. I mean, they were all sorts of different imagery. And we all had an idea that everybody would be, you know, leather gauntlets and whatever. And one
right,
had a huge big hair and a Hawaiian shirt. And
yeah,
we were kind of like a bit shocked because we were still like, you know, leather and bullet belts and stuff. But
sure.
yeah, I don't think they ever toured Europe again after that. Maybe that's kind of what broke them up, maybe was
Yeah,
'96. But yeah, amazing band. And I think a band who don't really get the kind of respect that maybe they deserve, especially Heart of the Ages and Omnio, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I kind of fell off after Omnio,
Sure.
and like their newer stuff doesn't, you know, hit the same for me.
No.
But Heart of the Ages,
Oh yeah. I mean, this is like if people say to me now they don't want to talk to me about primordial and pagan metal, and I go, look, you know, after 2000, somehow pagan metal began to be a derivative of power metal for some people. But if you go back
right?
to OG pagan
Yeah,
metal,
yeah,
got to be met talking about Heart of the Ages. You know, that's got to be one of your the cornerstones of what I would go like. That's pagan metal, and point to it
yeah,
as
yeah,
this earthy primal fucking tone. You know, it was very inspiring. You know.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean that, yeah, In the Woods were huge for us. But yeah, I mean, there weren't a lot of examples for American bands that we could really look towards that weren't, like you said, like Brutal Death or like Doom or something like that.
Yeah. So I can see a fucking recording going on behind you on the screen. Is that new Agalloch songs or what's going on?
No, that's. Can you really see that? Oh yeah, you can
Yeah,
see
yeah, I can
Pro
just
Tools.
about see it. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a new sculptured record.
yeah,
Do
yeah,
you know about sculptured?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was looking that up as well. Yeah, this is like the
Okay.
electronic thing you're taking a look at, isn't it?
No. Sculptured is like tech death.
Tech Day.
It's
Okay,
like
what's the electronic thing called then?
that's called Moonbladder.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, yeah, right.
I mean, I've got a few different things,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the thing that I'm working on most right now is Moonbladder. But the sculptured is this is our fifth record, and we used to be on the end like back in the day. Sculptured's been around longer than Agalloch actually,
Okay, right.
and it's Don's band mostly, but I've played bass for Sculptured longer than I've played bass for Agalloch. So
Tech Debt. Okay, so what's
yeah, I mean that's kind of like a wrong term. It's kind of like it's like a melodic technical death metal. We're worshiping human basically.
Oh, okay, right, yeah. That would
Yeah.
make sense. What's is that yeah, I suppose that is tech death in a way, isn't it?
I
But
think tech death now people think of like bands like Origin or Defeated Sanity, but like to me technical death metal will always be like Atheist, Cynic,
yeah, yeah,
Mid-Air, stuff
same.
like that.
Someone tried to play me a band at the weekend called Infant Annihilator.
I've
Now,
heard of this. I've never
and
heard of it.
all I could hear was bass drums, and it was just like brrrr, brrrr,
Yeah. Yeah.
brrrr, and the vocals. I couldn't hear any of it. And look, that's aside the point. I'm sure somebody will just be like, "Yes, Granddad. Of course, you don't understand Infant Annihilator." No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
are you
I'm,
tempted? Let me ask you this though, like because Agalloch is playing, you had the hiatus, you came back, you probably now are finding out the band is much beloved to people, which maybe at the end of the time in the band it seemed a bit soured, as you said. I mean, do you have trepidation about making some new music, or is it? I mean, because I would feel, fuck, what if you make it and people go, oh, or I'm sure they won't, but
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, do you feel trepidation,
Well,
or what do you feel?
um, yes and no. I do feel a little bit hesitant or trepidatious because of the reasons you stated.
Yeah,
Um, but also, no matter what we do, even if we write a record that's the best thing we've ever done in our lives, there's going to be some people that love it and some people that hate it. It doesn't matter. Even if it's a shit record, some people are going to love it, some are going to hate it. So you can't please everybody. And really, like, I tend not to worry about that stuff too much. I want to do what I want to do. And if we want to do it together, then we'll do it.
sure.
The hesitation really is based more about putting the time into it. Um, I'm not going to say we're not going to make a new record,
Mm.
but it's not our priority right now.
Yeah. Or maybe make it like
Personally,
a single or something, or
yeah. I mean, personally, I would like to do it because I love making records.
Yeah, yeah.
And, obviously I want people to like it, but really at the end of the day, I want to do this for me and my friends,
Mm.
So my friends being my bandmates, not my friends outside
Sure.
of the band. That would be
No,
super
no, I got
strange.
it. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the bands who did take some time out and come back, what I found is that people are very excited for the first record or two. But then if we think about the old metal bands that we love, whether it's Destruction or these kind of bands, they come back and it's kind of like, oh, okay, there's 5 or 6 new albums. I feel a bit like worn out with that. But to make like one statement of return and then just sit back and leave it sink in, that seems
Yeah.
to be the more reasonable approach to
Yeah.
these things, But having said that, it's not impossible to make a low point and come back up. I mean, look at a band like Rotting Christ. I mean,
Right.
they spent time where people were just like, oh, Sleep of the Angels, who cares? And then if you compare Sleep of the Angels and Theogonia, it's a huge, big upswing,
Yeah.
But to come back as a band who's taken some time off, yeah, you've got to kind of play the cards right, I think,
Yeah. Yeah. So like we don't want to rush it.
Yeah.
We just we're having fun doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of riding that wave. You know, we have discussed it for sure. But, you know, we have a lot of things going for us, but we have a lot of obstacles too. You know, we have a brand new drummer, which is great, and he's a great influence on us. But there's a lot of factors and a lot of variables to keep in mind. We want to avoid some pitfalls that we've had in the past as far as writing and recording go.
Yeah.
So again, I would like to do it, but it's not something that we are dwelling on either.
How did the process go in the past? Was it like, I mean, was it kind of all getting in the room together kind of thing, or did you sort of all do your bits on your own, or what was the story?
Well, the first couple records, Pill Folklore and the Mantle, basically everything was written by John. He wrote like the foundations, the structures, and then we all added to it. So, you know, I wrote my bass parts, Don wrote his guitar parts, and then we get into a room and kind of like arrange, and we give each other feedback.
Sure,
But
yeah.
basically, like the bones, the skeleton of each song was written by John.
Yeah.
As time went on and as the albums went on, Don and I had more of an influence on the songwriting process. So then you get to an album like Marrow, and
Oh yeah.
Don is writing songs, I'm writing like more pieces, and you get to like our last album, Serpent, and I wrote the first song on Serpent.
I feel like that's I think that Mau's as kind of underrated album somehow. I think when I think about it, it's not one I haven't thought about it in the entirety of this conversation. But now that you've mentioned the name, it feels like that's maybe a sort of underrated part of the
That when that one came out, a lot of people didn't really care about it, and now a lot of people love it. It's one of those that grew on people, I guess.
sometimes that can happen though. Like in the fullness of time, people begin to reappraise certain records that at the time seemed wide of the mark, or something.
Yeah,
A new generation will come in and decide that, hey, this is much better than people at the time gave it credit for, or something like that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to pull an example out of my ass, but there are too many examples. But yeah, it's yeah, that's a. I must, now that I've finished this conversation, I must go and pull out that record and listen to it again. I think though that like it's the one of the big pitfalls to fall into as a modern band is, I think, to lean into the technology too much. I think that like with Primordial,
Right.
we still do things like we did in '91, which means it's still us in a room arguing. We have the board in the corner and we go, and if I go, can we change the key? Kieran will just go roll his eyes and go, yeah, all right. You want C sharp instead of C, and he'll do it, and just to make me realize that doesn't sound right. Or if I
Right.
go, I have a riff on my phone and go, what about this riff? The odd time, 2 or 3 out of every 10, he goes, oh yeah. We put it in, but we're all in the room because we're not. I was doing an interview the weekend, and I was there. They were asking me, how is it Primordial there's so few lineup changes? And I said, well, because we're still friends. I said to
Yeah.
him, if you can believe it, they're not fed up with me to the point where we don't do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I'm sure they're fed up with me at 6 a.m. in an airport,
Yeah.
or whatever. That's a given. But we still have enjoy being creative and make fun each other laugh. But and have enjoy hanging out and traveling together. But a lot of new bands, I think, lean into the technological advantages too much, and it removes the human process from.
Right. And that's Agalloch at its core is a group of three best friends.
Yeah.
Um and that's why we fell apart, is because we started butting heads as friends. We had different perspectives, different priorities, different ideas, and that friendship started to separate a little
Yeah.
bit. So then of course the band imploded. But like without that core friendship, Agalloch wouldn't exist. And that's the most important part, is us three, and our like the things that we've accomplished together, the experiences we've had, the longevity of our friendships. It's incredible.
Well, let me ask you a personal question then. Like during the moment where the band stopped and you split up, was it a case of you came back around to be friends together again before contemplating the band again, or was it, let's do the band again and that repaired the friendships? Like which came back around first?
The friendship first,
Yeah, yeah.
and Don and John, Don and John made up way before John and I did.
Don Juan, even we could say.
What's that?
No, it's just Don Juan.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So it took me years and years. And, but then I finally was like, this is like, I'm the only reason that this friendship is not happening. I'm standing in the way of it. He had, given me an olive branch many times. He tried to explain himself,
Sure.
and I was just being stubborn about it.
Yeah.
And then finally I got to a point where I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm being pigheaded about this. And so
Yeah.
he and I met up, and the three of us met up, and we slowly started getting that friendship back together.
Yeah.
But after a year and a half of doing that, we get together, and of course we would talk about Agalloch.
Of course. Yeah.
And then pretty soon it got to a point, it's like, well, we have a really good thing going on. Like, we should see if we could do it again.
Yeah.
And so we kind of cautiously started getting that ball rolling. And but yeah, I mean, without the friendship, it won't work. So it was definitely friendship first.
Because like being Irish, like a lot of my friends, a lot of Irish people, they can be quite, they can be quite, let's call them grudge holders,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I've never quite found myself to be like that. And I think it's maybe comes back to what we discussed in the previous part, which was that if you're very conscious of, the
Yeah. The
time
time.
clock clicking, you go, you know what, I could hold a grudge over that thing or be pissed off about it now, but there's got to be a day where you wake up and go, you know what, we got to roll ahead. Like
Yeah.
Me and Paul from Primordial, we had a fist fight at the side of the road on the way to Brutal Assault at like 4 a.m. Well, it's more of a fucking bitch slap and a slap, and
Yeah.
the side of the road, and it's not the first time it's happened between us. And the next morning, he just come down to me at the breakfast table and he goes, "Sorry," and we just shook hands. Never
Yeah.
was an issue, never was a thing. We're just
Yeah.
like, you know what, that happens. Drink whiskey, you be Irish, you're gonna throw a
Yeah.
slap.
Yeah.
And he gave me one and I gave him one. Then we left it alone. It's never entered my mind as a thing to be like, oh, you fucking hit me
Yeah.
9 months ago or something. And I think it's very good to just sort of at some stage kind of go, you got a short spin around the ball of dirt. Okay, if someone really fucks you over, okay, but in minor indiscretions or even major indiscretions, sometimes I think you've got to suck it up and and maybe be magnanimous or a little bit of a bigger person and go, or sometimes just even be conscious of the mortality thing and just go, you know what, let's
Yeah.
move on.
What I found is life's too short. I've got too much
Yeah,
shit I want to do. And with so many cases, like this case was like, there was fault on both sides of the area, on both sides of the road. And I didn't understand where he was coming from. He didn't understand where I was coming from.
yeah,
There's miscommunication, there's misunderstanding. It was such a bigger, more nuanced situation than I realized.
yeah,
And so, yeah, but life's too short. And now John and I are super tight,
yeah,
having a great time together. It's just, life is too short to hold on to that shit and
yeah,
just keep me from living life. Like,
yeah.
that's what I want to do more than anything, is live life.
Well, that's exactly it. And I mean, like I've sometimes I thought to myself, well, we could make a big fucking deal about this thing, or you know what, next week we're going to play in Ukraine. And when I've actually calmed down, I'm not a man who loses his temper, but when I actually, have become less impulsive because I try and control that, and then about 45 minutes an hour, you go, you know what? Okay, there's always extenuating circumstances. And trying to
Yeah.
put yourself in someone else's position where the reason why maybe they threw the slap or drank the
Yeah.
bottle of whiskey. Why the fuck did you drink a bottle of whiskey in 2 hours in the first place? Maybe there's
Yeah.
something else going on that you need to ask about somebody about, and which is what you're supposed to do if you're mates for a long time.
Yeah.
So we always kind of Primordial is like it's a weird thing because it's very lots of Irish bands that I know that are my friends. There's underlying bubbling under tension. We
Yeah.
don't really have that, even though we've had our fucking altercations.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, life is too short for that shit. So, if I couldn't get over myself and if I was too stubborn about it, I'd still be sitting here and be like upset about something that I don't even really remember what happened,
And then
almost 10 years ago.
and then you know what? You'd be 57 and you'd be sitting in a bar with a beer and somebody go, "Weren't you the?" And then you
Yeah.
go, "Well, let me tell you about the fucking." And I always
Yeah.
thought I never want to be a fucking bitter barfly, you know.
Hell no,
Good
no,
name
and that's
for a band, by the way.
that's the thing. Somebody's like, "Weren't you an Agalloch?"
Yeah, yeah,
But like, now I'm like, I am an Agalloch. It's not past.
yeah, yeah.
It's still happening,
Yeah.
and that's just because I could get over myself and not be a stubborn asshole about it.
So do you think like if you were going to make new songs, I mean, like you must have sat there with the bass of the guitar and thought, I wonder could that be a fucking bit or something like.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, I mean, yes, of course,
But
but
like, have you thought like what avenue or what path or because I with new promoter we don't think much about. There's no plan.
yeah,
There's no grand plan. So with Exile Amongst the Ruins, you get songs like Stolen Years, like quite very introspective, gloomy songs. But I did think about this album, the last one, How It Ends, and I thought, you know what? I feel like we need a foot stomper and a
right,
defiant fuck you heavy metal record. And you began to even subconsciously push, you began to pull the levers and maneuver everybody into the what you think is
yeah,
the sort of right latitude or longitude for making it a bit
uh-huh.
aggressive. You're quietly turning up the gain on the bass amp, and you know
yeah.
you're mixing more into Glory Ride into the drum sound, and
Into
um,
Glory Ride. There you go. Yeah, uh, yeah. I mean, definitely, I've definitely done that. Right now, it's not really on my radar. Right
yeah,
now, I'm focused on other things. But
it's a blip. It's a blip. Approaching just on the edge.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, when the three of us or the four of us, when Hunter's around, when we get together and we talk about making new music, I get really excited about it. I'll be excited about it for about a month, and then something else will happen. I'll get excited about that, and it's just kind of in the background. But you know, in 3 weeks we're headed to Australia for 2 shows, so I'm
oh
sure
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
talk about it then.
We played there five or when did we play there? 2017, 2018. That's great. I suppose it's Melbourne and Sydney, right? So
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. No, it's fucking it's amazing place. It's weird. It's like it's a wide and open, also very very expensive.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
bring your Agalloch credit card.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
We will for sure.
your Wild Rags credit card.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. My wild rag. I wish I had a wild rags credit card.
That'd be amazing. I remember I had a Wild Rag T-shirt that I seemed to got for free from somebody, and I was like, ugh, never wearing that, because it
Oh
wasn't
man.
wasn't an Order from Chaos or a Blasphemy shirt or something. But now
Right.
I kind of wish that I had it. It would
Yeah.
be a nice curio.
Well, you are a t-shirt enthusiast.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean you can use the word fascist if you want, but yeah, it's
I'll
I,
say enthusiast.
yeah, I know I'm super nerdy about shirts. They either have to be really, really old or my friends' bands. One or the
Yeah.
other, such as well, Niflheim. I think it's pretty unusual Niflheim shirt, but listen, who doesn't love Niflheim? But
Right.
the old T-shirt thing is just like it's a sort of minor obsession that almost
Yeah.
kind of derails my brain. I mean, if
Right.
anybody who knows me would know that that's not surprising at all. That I would be sitting there at 5 a.m. waiting for the shuttle at 5:15 to go to the airport, going, "Do you want the Into the Dark or the Light shirt, or the original Carnivore shirt, or the original
Right.
shirt?" No, you should bring all three. You have to bring all
Right.
three.
Yeah. Do you still get those shirts though? Are you able to come across those sometimes?
Every now and again, every now and again. I mean, a guy sent me the other day. I keep talking. I'll show you. A guy just sent me this the other day. Right? Check this out.
Oh shit.
The Motorhead jumper from 1980.
Damn. Wow.
He's an old dude. He just came up to me at a Dread Sovereign gig, my other band. He goes, we started talking about Motorhead and UFO and Saxon. He goes, and then he just sent me an email. And he goes, I've got a fucking shirt for you. I'll swap it to you for a Primordial shirt. Well, I mean that's people from
Wow.
England. And I just opened this envelope like fuck, and it's like that's a 80. It's like a
Wow.
weird sort of white inside. It's like a pajama, kind of like a weird.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It reminds me of a school uniform I had, or a school jumper you got in 1983 or something.
Okay. Yeah.
Just sent it to me, and I was like, somehow, yeah, things just keep being, how was it pulled into my, and like a sort of Death Star for rare T-shirts, or whatever you say, like a sort of Death Ray or something. They just sort of
Yeah.
randomly
Yeah.
just keep ending up.
you put that out there, and the universe is providing you
Exactly.
with cool t-shirts.
What is that? Is that called serendipity? I'm not sure. We see how I recognized your shirt just by the bit at the top, which was
Yeah.
little.
Oh, I love doing that when people have like a hoodie on, and you can
Yeah,
recognize like, oh, that's a Exhorder logo. I
yeah,
recognize that just from
yeah,
like the very top, or
yeah, yeah.
whatever it is.
But that's
Yeah,
just
I
that
love that.
nerd stuff. That's that nerd stuff from the 80s, isn't it? That like knowing that, songs are the times of songs, the bits at the back of the demo thing when you would go, oh, that's the symbol from the blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
which logo it is, or yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I'm still just such a, there's nothing you can do. You can't relinquish that nerddom.
No.
It's within you. Is nerddom the right word? I don't know.
Sure, I like it. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean it. Yeah, I love that type of stuff, and I love being able to like pick out somebody from their hair. It's like, oh, that's John Tardy,
Yeah,
or
yeah, of
that's
course.
Trevor Perez, or something.
Or a Gorefest riff.
Yeah. That was just so funny because it's like I haven't talked to you in like years, and then you're like, "What's up with your fucking Gorefest shirt?"
But it was just straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Look, I mean, look, it is just, well, seems like a good a moment as ever to stop.